Hey everyone, I'm Kirsten with Unfinished Wood Co. I'm excited to show you how to paint this adorable gnome that's perfect for your front porch. But the greatest part is with the gnome, you get 10 interchangeable hands that are perfect for each season. So let's go inside and get started. So I want to show you what supplies you're going to need to get started. So we're painting this cute little gnome. So you will get a gnome body unfinished, and then you will also get 10 little interchangeable hands. Everything's unfinished. So the supplies that you're going to need, these are the supplies that you're going to need just to paint the body. And I love folk art chalk paint. It's great if your project goes outdoors. It's great if it goes indoors. It's super durable. So I used white chalk paint, red chalk paint, black, and then this is something we're going to use to add all the shading and highlighting, and this is a stain, and this is walnut. So that's what you need for your gnome body, and then what you're going to need for all of the different colors on your interchangeable hands are these 2-ounce folk art acrylics. And again, you can use the folk art acrylics with the chalk paint. If you have a green that's a chalk paint, you're good to use that. Use any acrylic paints that you want, but I just want to show you what we're using. So you're going to need the flesh color, you're going to need an orange, a dark green, a light green, a yellow, and then I'm going to use 2 grays for the beard. So let me show you how easy it is to get started. The first thing you want to do to prepare your project is we are going to paint the entire gnome. I like to use a large brush, and let me go back to the basic supplies. You are going to need always water, always a palette, some paper towels, and I like to have just a larger brush, a medium brush, and a smaller brush. That'll get you through everything. And make sure for this, when you apply your pattern, we're going to have a pencil and a Sharpie for some little tips at the end. Okay, so using your large brush, I dip right into the chalk paint. You are going to base coat your entire gnome. You're going to do the entire top, and always make sure that you get all of those edges because you want a really nice finished look. So you are going to paint that and let that dry completely, and then you are also going to base coat the top of all of your individual hands. See how you get great coverage, and you are just going to completely paint those and let those dry. So once all of those are dry, you have got a painted gnome body. It's great coverage, and this allows us to get started with the pattern. So you'll see for the gnome, the only real detail is his nose. So it's very easy to look at the outside edge of your design, of your wooden shape. You can see where the hat starts, and you are just going to very lightly with a pencil draw just a pretty basic straight line all the way across your gnome. And that shows you exactly where the nose is going to go. So you go to the center of that line, and again, you just draw a very basic, very light oval to create the nose. And the cute thing about the gnome is if you want, sometimes you see them with a bigger oval nose, make it bigger. But this is just a pretty basic oval that will give you the look of the finished project. So that's the only pattern that you need to apply. And then it's as simple as coloring like you're coloring in a coloring book. So I am going to use the red chalk paint. Again, I'm going to go right into the bottle. I'm going to use a medium brush. Stir that up just a little. Sometimes it separates on the top. The chalk paint is great for 1 coat coverage. But if you need 2 coats, all you do is let it dry in between. And all I am going to do is follow that pencil line, the little oval of the nose. Get more paint when you need it. The oval of the nose. Just like a coloring book, you're just following the lines. And then I'm going to paint his entire hat red. And here again, do not forget to get those edges so it's a nice finished look. That chalk paint covers really nicely. So you are going to cover that completely. Folk art chalk paint dries very fast. So once that dries, you can apply a second coat. It should dry in less than 20 minutes. Okay. Get the edges nice and good. Lift that up just a little. Yep, a little bit on the edge. You want it to look complete. Did I get them all? Oh, a little bit more on my edge. Want it to look nice and finished. Did I get it all? There we go. Okay, I got it all. So now, using a medium brush, I'm gonna, again, you just are following, just like a coloring book, that soft pencil pattern. You're just gonna go on there, follow it, and know at the very end when we shade and highlight all this, if a little bit of the pencil shows, do not worry about that because you'll cover it up with the shading and highlighting. But you are just gonna go and follow that pencil pattern, and then you get perfect placement for your hat, your gnome, and you can see exactly where the beard starts. So you're gonna let that dry, and then you've got your base coated gnome. So everything is on there for you except for the fun stuff, the shading and highlighting. So what we're gonna do here, let me get rid of the red and the white, is first what we are gonna do is we are gonna do his beard. So I am gonna put a little bit of my light gray on the palette and a little bit of my dark gray. Always shake them up just a little bit to make sure they're mixed onto the palette. So here I'm going to use my largest flat brush, and all I'm going to do to get all of that shading and highlighting, I want to make sure you guys can see it. I'm going to bring him, the finished one, right here next to it just for a minute. So all of this very basic shading and highlighting, but that makes all the character pop out. I'm going to get my brush wet, dry it off just a little, but put some water on your plate. And then I'm going to dip into the light gray, but water it down a lot with the water on the palette. So it's very runny. And then just doing big strokes, starting at his little nose, I'm just going to kind of go down in the direction of the beard. And you don't want them to be perfect because that's what gives you all those layered dimensions. Always picking up a little bit more water, starting at his little nose, and just kind of working your way down to the bottom of the surface. Pick up more paint when you need it, but always make sure you pick up a little water. Just giving you some character. Get more water when you need it, but very simple. It's almost like a watercolor wash that gives you all that layered dimension for his beard. Go all the way to the edge, make it darker if you like, or you can keep it a real light gray. And then getting more water, I'm going to go into the dark gray, same thing. Lots of water on my brush and just some of the dark gray paint. And then I'm just going to pull down. Very loose, just creating all that dimension. And if for some reason there's an area that maybe is too dark or that you want to lighten up a little bit, you can always take some white. I'm going to get more of that white chalk paint and just kind of go right over it. As it shades and highlights, it just adds some texture to your little gnome's beard. Perfect. So that's your beard. I'm going to clean off my brush. And I am going to use, this is a great product. So this is the Folk Art Wood Tint. The color I'm choosing is walnut. I'm going to give it a little shake. Now this is not a chalk paint. This is actually a stain. So this is what creates all of this dark highlight that you see. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to use my medium brush. Again, I'm going to get it wet. Put some water on my palette. Make sure you guys can see that. Put some water on my palette, and I am going to dip into that wood tint and then right into the water. It's very rich, almost like not a black, but a very dark brown stain. Make sure not too much is on my brush, and then I am just going to really, really random outline with simple, almost feathered brush strokes, the very edge of his hat. And that's just creating all of that dimension. You can go up and around his nose a little bit. I sometimes take the edge of a paper towel and you can just kind of soften the edges, almost working it like a stain. Maybe a little bit more on there. Right here where the brim of the hat would kind of bend around. Pick up a little bit more of the brown, but just very loose and random. You cannot mess this part up. You can add a few little lines where the hat would crease, soften it with a paper towel, but just create all of that highlighting. And then I'm going to do the same thing on his little nose. I'm going to go around the edge. Kind of, there'll be a dark side and maybe keep one side lighter. And I'm just going to soften that with my paper towel. You can soften it with a different brush. You can even soften it with your finger. But all you're doing is creating just some dimension to get that hand-painted look. And then you've got all that shading on your little gnome's face. If you wanted to add a little bit of this to his beard, you can softly do it with your finger. Again, this is a stain. The more water that you add, the softer the color. So you're just going to go in there and really just add like a little bit where his mustache would be. And then I'm going to add a lot of water and go right over it, because then it kind of removes it. Blend all that together. You could finish it off with just a little bit of removing it with your paper towel. But you've got so much dimension there on your little gnome. Okay, at the very end, just to add one more layer of color to him, I am going to use the white. I washed my brush and dried it off. You don't want it to be wet at all for this. I am going to get a little bit of the white chalk paint, and then I'm actually going to remove most of the chalk paint on my palette. So I'm dipping in the white, and then I'm actually like getting most of that paint off of my brush. Use a little bit of your paper towel. And then I'm just going to almost softly scrub, like a dry brush effect, a little light side of his nose. Get a little paint, but again, just a little. Take most of it off. And I'm going to just softly go along the edges of his hat. I did dark on this side, so I'm going to do a little light on this side, almost following the same little area, but just giving little spots where the light would hit it. Soft little texture. You can do more or you can do less, depending on how much detail you want on your gnome. You can add a little highlight spot on his little nose. You can do a little bit more on his beard, but it's a very dry brush. You're not base coating, so you don't want a lot of paint. You're just adding some dimension. So there, you've got all your details to your little gnome body. And at the very end, you've got your beard. What you want to do is, using the black chalk paint, you want to go in and follow almost the little pattern that his beard makes. So you can see the edge. You just kind of want to mimic that. And you can't do it wrong. You can do one swoop, you can do two, you could even do a straight line. But you just want to go in there and add his little shoes, making his little toes pop off at the end. I'm going to paint the top. So you've got the little edge where his beard stops. And then make sure that you go in there and always complete your edges. So just the little spot where his shoes are. I'm going to paint that bottom. There you go. You've got a finished gnome with a little bit of shading, a little bit of highlighting, perfect to put on your front porch. So you're going to let that dry now. If you're going to put your little guy outside, just give him a squirt of an outdoor varnish. You can use an aerosol or a brush on, but just so he's more durable in the weather. Okay, so once you've got that done, I just want to show you really quick. So you've base coated all of your little hand pieces, and the only pattern that you need to make for them is using the pencil. You can see where their little hands start. You are just going to go in and complete the side of that oval. Very simple. Just complete that into a little oval shape. So that represents his hands, and then using that same color that we did on his nose, that same light peach color, you are going to go in, again, just like a coloring book, and you are going to paint all the little hands peach. Just following that perfect little pattern, that oval that you created with the pencil. See, you get the perfect hands holding all of the shapes. Then you're going to clean off your brush, and you are going to go in and you are going to paint your heart red. Now once that dries, just like we did on the gnome, you're going to use those same techniques to stain and highlight and just add a little bit of dimension to all of your shapes. Paint that completely. Again, with chalk paint, it dries so quick. If you think you need a second coat, once that's dry, just put a second coat on there. There. And then once all your little hands dry, you've created that pattern to make the oval, you are going to shade and highlight just like you did your gnome body. Okay, so a few little tips. So what we did with this guy, which makes changing it out is super easy, is on the back, let me show you guys this way. On the back of each hand, I put a little Velcro dot. So when you change out each of your pieces, you just use that Velcro dot to change it for each season. This little guy can go anywhere. Where I put mine, I used a command strip, actually attached it to the back, and I used that to attach it to one of my flower pots. So he sits out on my front porch perfectly. Now let me show you all of the little hands once they are completed and painted. So using the techniques that I taught you, don't forget you get 10 different seasons. You get the watermelon, you get the cupcake, you get the apple, maybe for back to school. You get the ornament for Christmas, the pumpkin. You get the star. You get that great sign that you can personalize any way you want, the artist palette, and the clover. You get 10 great shapes. So, and just remember, all of the techniques that we used on our gnome body is exactly what you do to create all of this. You make a pattern for your hands. All you do is paint them peach. Every single time, a base coat of peach, a little bit of stain, rub it with a paper towel, and that dry brush of white gives you all of that rich texture. Here again, you just base coating red and then using that fun technique. Same here, dry brush the white, really very simple. Remember what we did here to create all of this. Base coated with the red, doing the polka dots is very simple. Here I used a simple little stencil. Know that you can change these up any way that you want. This one's kind of fun. Once it was all dry, I just used gray, did the hands like I told you. All of the words are done with a Sharpie marker. That makes it super easy. So that is perfect. And then what you do, don't forget, you've got Velcro dots on the back of each one, and you just change those out for every season. It's perfect. Thanks for joining us. Have fun making your gnome.